Seems everything working. I can see a preview of the stream, but you can say if something goes wrong. Cool, I see already people here. Let me know in the chat if you have any troubles with sound or video or with something else. Cool, all good. Then let's start. Or maybe we'll wait a few more seconds for people to join. I see 3 people currently viewing. Maybe someone will join soon. I will post the link to our local community. Okay, and let's start. Today we are talking about my configuration. For now, it's pretty minimal, like most basic features that I need to work on my projects. And this configuration contains both system configuration and home configuration. First one is managed by Guix system subcommand, and the second one managed by Guix home subcommand. For people new here on my streams, I use Guix package manager and operating system, and also develop some tooling for it. And today I describe or doing some overview of my configuration. And on top of Guix system and Guix home, I wrote another utility called RD, and previous stream was about RD and how it works. We looked at some details, implementation details, and today we will see it in action. I split my configuration in 3 parts. Basically, RD allows you to declare your configuration in terms of features, and each feature can provide some values to other features to use, and also it allows to set up system or home services, which is used by Guix home or Guix system. If you're not very familiar, I recommend you to visit. Oh, nice. I don't have browser right now. Actually, I have, but okay. Let me create new window and move it here. Here. Someone. Oops. Hello, Miratze. GNU manual. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, I will probably post. Okay, I open it. Cool. Here in Guix manual, section 10 point something, I suppose. Defining services. Here you can find the information about system services. The same applied to home services, the same information. Basically, it's just the building blocks for your system and home configuration. Let's go back to my configuration, which consists of 3 parts, as I said. First one is user-specific part, which contains something which is very specific to myself. And here I declare 3 features for now. It's user info feature, feature GNU-PG, and feature keyboard. Obviously, first one is needed to provide some basic information about my user, about email, and so on, and to make other features aware of what user is currently present in the system, and to configure on their parts depending on those values. For example, if I specify email in user info, my Emacs configuration will pick this email and full name and will set up the variables inside Emacs according to the values I provided here in user information. Guix WPP asks, do you use iCat regularly? Doesn't it complain much on some websites? I don't use iCat often. In most cases, I used ungoogled Chromium for Wayland, but for now, I don't have working Chromium instance. Just few minutes before I started the stream, I broke it. Probably I can roll back to previous generations of my home environment, but I will do it after the stream, not to spend your time doing such operation. Okay, and later we will see how other features will be using this information provided by userinfo feature. After that, I declare GNU-PG to basically sign my commits or to log in to SSH servers and so on. I use GNU-PG also for accessing SSH, and GNU-PG can provide SSH agent. And last one is feature keyboard, just two layouts that I use in most cases. It's English layout, Dvorak layout, and Russian Yetsukin. And that's pretty much it. Everything specific to my user and to myself is declared here, and everything else declared somewhere else. Here is the main list of features. Terminals, my shell, SSH, Git, fonts, some supporting features, and also my window manager or Wayland compositor, Emacs related features, and some very basic features like XDG, base directories definition, and base services to make the system working, and some packages that doesn't belong to any home services I placed here in home packages. It allows me to use those packages without configuring them, but most of them later will be packaged or wrapped in home services to make it easier to configure them and provide .files for those programs. Okay, it's main part of my configuration. You can see it's pretty small right now. It's because I only switched to this configuration yesterday and doesn't have enough features implemented, but this set of features is already allows me to work on my projects, and it's fine. And after that, I have some configuration related to my system and to the exact host. What do you mean that Chromium is kind of wonky on Guix? Seems pretty good to me. I didn't have any problems until right now when it's just crashing. I think that it is the first time when I have any problems with Chromium on Guix system, I mean. And here I define my devices, my partitions, and encrypted partition which contains all other partitions, and boot partition. After that, I define just few features which are host specific. First one is host information, host name and time zone, and the second one is related to file systems that I defined above. Also, I define feature high DPI. It allows to set a proper fonts on my TTIs to make them bigger and easier to use. because on TTI I don't have valent scaling and can't read very small fonts for a long time. Also, feature high DPI provides some values which can be used by other features to make fonts bigger or something else. KHVPP also says that he doesn't have any problems with ungoogled Chromium and it's very stable for him. And Miratse comments, what I mean is, sometimes there are substitutes available, sometimes not. The browser itself is good. Okay, I got your point. Yeah, it may be true because Chromium takes a lot of time to build, and probably just after it updated in repository, the substitute won't be ready instantly. This is one of the problems, that we don't have any stable branches or something like that, and we have rolling release. Every time we do, maintainers apply some patches and do some updates to Guix repository, it needs to rebuild all the substitutes which required by those updates, and it can take some time. Okay, and after that I just combine all three lists. First one, user-specific features, generic features, which contains Emacs and other stuff, and host-specific features. And after that I can define two variables. First one contains operating system. I just call rdconfig operating system getter on exe configuration. And the second one contains home environment. Let's take a look at what inside my system configuration, for example. I will evaluate the namespace and will get some errors. Cool. RD features password utils. It complains about something. Oh, from time to time I'm kinda not so happy with Geyser and how it works. No source code for model features password utils. Let's check the statement. I have RD features password utils. Seems they okay. It contains an error. That is why it can be built. Okay, good. Features Emacs. The project is under active development, and that is why some things which are not committed yet may be not complete and contain some errors. And okay, it can contain a lot of errors. It's interesting because just a few seconds ago I reconfigured and it worked. That means that the all source code should be in a working state. List of elisp packages, elisp configuration package, elisp. Okay. Now I understand what's the problem. The problem is that I am not updated load path and doesn't provide a fresh source code for my REPL. Okay, let's kill the REPL and let's do it one more time. Now it works. Cool. What was the original problem? I started the REPL and try to evaluate my namespace without adding my project to the load pass, and that is why it was complaining that there's no such model or something like that. And now I started the REPL, added my project load pass, and everything works fine. The code evaluated, and now I want to see the content of Guix operating system record, and it's very big. Actually, it will be hard to find something in this mess, but you can see that from this configuration, from those features, we got Guix operating system. The interesting thing is setting the kernel for operating system. In those features, host-related features, you didn't see anything related to the kernel. And also, I use default, by default, RD provides EFI bootloader, grab EFI bootloader. That is why I didn't set bootloader here. But maybe in the different case, you will want to set a different bootloader, and feature bootloader is already here for that. But let's see how we can set a custom kernel. KHVPP says maybe you need to use a full command by specifying the load path. Can't you use your makefile? Actually, yeah, here you can see that I prefix the command with load path, and that is why the command works and REPL doesn't. Thank you for the comment. It's a little pity that I read it so late. It would save some time for me. Okay, we was talking about setting custom kernel. Here I have a separate project which contains a configuration which do very simple thing. It takes Guix config provided by the code you saw earlier. It inherits it and updates the list of features by appending feature kernel and feature-based services. Before doing that, it takes original features and removes base services from it and kernel from it in case it exists. And here I use feature kernel. I set the kernel loadable models. For my kernel, I need this model to make it possible to operate with virtual cameras, and also it's necessary for my audio cards and those firmwares required for my Wi-Fi working. And this kernel is taken from a separate channel. And as you can see, the configuration is pretty simple. I just set custom kernel. I set substitute URL to take pre-built kernel if it's available, and just inherit all the features declared in my original configuration. And it is how I get my system configuration. And if we will take a look at Guix system describe, we will see that there is a path to configuration file and channels that I used to build my system. Let's take a look at the content of the file. And the content of the file will be exactly what we saw right now. The inherited Guix configuration with 2 more features added. I hope it's not very confusing. Yes, I can elaborate on already built kernel part. Here you can see that I use Linux, not Linux Libre, And this Linux kernel taken from a separate channel called non-Guix. And if I just write this code and use this Linux package on the system reconfigure, it will be necessary to build this kernel. But there is a guy who installed another substitute server which takes commits from non-Guix repository and builds substitutes for some packages, for example, for Linux kernel itself. And right here, I set substitute server URLs, additional URL which points to the server. And also I set additional public key, which allows to check that substitutes are provided by the person who owns this server. And if we will take it feature-based services implementation, we will see that what it basically does. It takes base services and modify Guix service type by inheriting original configuration of Guix service type and appending a value of Guix substitute URLs to default substitute URLs, and also adding authorization key. It's the implementation part of adding substitute server to configuration via RDA feature. But other than that, it's just basically another substitute server provided by some kind person. Yep, you can just search issues in the repository and find that there is an issue related to substitute server and the instruction how to set it on a basic system, and here you can see how to set it using RDA. Cool. That's it. That's pretty much it about my system configuration. It's pretty thin because I try to keep as much things as possible in my home configuration. And if you take a look at Guix home describe, here you will see that I use those channels. I also checked Flat Watson channel to see Emacs with native compilation, but I don't use it right now. Maybe later we will see. Here you can see the configuration, and this configuration is basically what we saw in the file with list of features. And as you can see, my reconfiguration command, for now it's pretty big and maybe even scary, but in reality it's just Guix home reconfigure with my configuration file. And it's basically where the whole setup is declared. And let's take a little closer look to some features and how they interact with each other. For example, here you see feature fonts, which contains definition of some fonts. Actually, if you take a look at the bottom of the screen, you will see that each feature is just a function which have some keyword arguments. And here you can see keyword arguments which can be provided to feature fonts. And I provide only 2 arguments, all other will have some default values. And for now, if I start Emacs, you will see the picture like that. But let's update those values to something more interesting. For example, for monospaced font, I will use a bigger variant of Iosifka. And for sans font, which will be used for variable pitch font in Emacs, I will be using, for example, Liberation serif, and let's take a slightly bigger variant like that. And let's rebuild my home configuration, and let's see how it will affect, for example, Emacs. You can see it takes a little more time because it also rebuilds some stuff related to Emacs, but not too much, just a small package. Okay, and now I launch Emacs and see it seems different, but for some reason it doesn't apply font size. But if you take a look at our face, you can see it Liberation serif, but for some reason it's equal to 15. Okay, let's take a look at Emacs SCM file, because feature fonts provides those values for to make it clear that it is actually it may be not a different font. 1 second. Serif, it should be, yeah, it looks like serif font. And let's use feature font with default values. Let's rebuild and launch one more Emacs here. While building, I will take a look at feature max faces and what I did wrong here. Sans font size. Yeah, I use Emacs Diamond, but here I launch Emacs without client. You can see that those fonts are obviously different, and this one is Go 15. Oops. And this one is Liberation serif, but they both have 15 size, which is kind of strange because I set size explicitly here. Okay, let's do something like that. Whoops. Font. It's not so easy to set font properly in Emacs. I don't know why, but the code that I wrote here will work for fonts with sizes. I hope it will work. But the resize of such fonts won't be possible, which is very strange. I don't know the reason of this bug. I will need to spend some time exploring it, but it is not the first time when I face this issue with Emacs. Okay, and now you can see the Emacs started with pretty big font. Let's make it a little smaller to make it fit to my screen. Oop. It will be 16 and 17. And once we got it working, I will explain how it works. Good. Starting another Emacs, and you can see it has a bigger font. Yosifka 16, and if I type variable pitch mod, it will be liberation serif 17. Good. It works at least somehow. I will need to clean up the code, but it's not so important right now. I will do it later, but what is important is how it works. Feature fonts contains some default values, some default list of fonts to be installed. And what it does, it creates a simple service which extends home profile with a list of fonts, default fonts and fonts provided by the user. And also, it makes those values available for other features. And that's pretty much what it does. Actually, the home, Guix home, also provides font utils. It should be somewhere here. The font config. Just take a look at my home Guix home profile for the fonts installed. And that is why all fonts installed by Guix home will be available for the user. And probably we will extend the capabilities of font config home service, and we'll be configuring it here too. But for now, it just allows to install fonts in Guix home profile and make them available for user. And very simple feature, just providing few values which can be used by other features. KHWPP asks, how positive are you about this work being merged to Guix? Actually, I didn't have time to continue this thread because was pretty busy with RDE and Guix home itself, and I still have two small refactorings not yet finished because I got some troubles with my broken leg this previous week, and still have not so much time and power to do it, but I hope to finish this refactoring soon, and after that I will continue to work on merging Guix home to Guix. If you talk about RDE, it's another question. I don't see RDE to be a part of Guix, at least now, because it's very young and unstable project, and it's nice to have it. It allows to make configuration very simple and easy, but it's not very well designed, and it's suitable only for some use cases. For desktop user, it works. For people who wants to provide some configuration for some server, it may be not so good, because it relies on the idea that there is one user, one operating system, one host, and you actually can combine different features to provide configuration for different hosts, but it still rely on assumption that there is one user of one host. And I don't know if I want to try to solve this issue or kind of assumption and to make it work for multiple users, but we will see in the future. For now, it's more like experimentation and idea how the Guix configuration can be done in easier for user way. Okay, let's take another feature which actually uses fonts provided by feature fonts. It's feature Emacs faces, and this feature just takes the values of values provided by font feature, and based on those values it creates a Lisp configuration package. And this configuration package just doing very simple thing. When faces loaded, it evaluates this form, and this form just sets faces. And after that, this feature extends Emacs service, Emacs home service, with very little thing called Lisp packages, and it contains only one package, which is configuration faces. And configuration faces is just is a small package which contains only this code. If we open our Emacs and we'll take a look at load path, and we'll open it, you can see the two packages, configure faces and configure org mode. And oops, let's do it. And configure faces is just basically the code that you saw in this feature, but slightly differently presented, because it's pretty printed by Guix, and the indentation doesn't conform the original indentation. And yeah, it will be loaded when Emacs starts. I don't add too much stuff to init.el file to make it a little smaller and simpler. You can take an init.el file, and you will see it contains only a few values. As you can see, those values also not hard-coded, but provided by some features. And let's just take a look at feature Emacs. And feature Emacs contains this code, which allows to set values in init.el file, and those values are provided by some features. For example, by feature user info, and full name and email is taken from those values, and after that they appears here. Okay, I think that it basically everything that I wanted to tell you today. Features, values, interacting between features using those values, system configuration, custom kernel, and home configuration with Sway, Emacs, GNU-PG, SSH, Git, Alacrity, and ZSH. That's pretty much it. Very simple, very minimal setup that I currently use for development. I don't quite happy with it because it lacks some features that I would like to use also. And as you can see, there are very small amount of Emacs features. As you see here with faces examples, every other Emacs feature provides some capabilities to Emacs. For example, if I will comment this feature out, my Emacs won't contain Magit and settings for faces. For example, here I can type Magit, and it will ask me for repository I want to use Magit with. And if I make another configure, and we'll launch another Emacs. You can see that it has some default fonts, Deja Vu Sans, normal, and if I try to execute Majid, it will say no match. It's because I disabled those two features, which extends my Emacs configuration. And as you saw, it doesn't modify init.el files. It provides those extensions by a separate packages, which may be not the best way to do it, but at least for now it seems very cool idea. Let's see how it works in how it will work in a longer period. Okay, any questions, suggestions, ideas, or comments? Okay, if you want to ask something later, you can find me by email in IRC or somewhere else and ask me directly, or put some comments under the recording of the stream. And I'm very glad that you joined, and I hope you enjoyed, and see you later.